Selma Rayon was a simple girl, given very little opportunity in life. She only sees him for a second, and that alone unsettles her. But Alaric Voss has other plans. A figure used to owning and controlling everything around him now comes across a piece on his chessboard that can't be moved so easily. And Selma must play for more than just her life as she knows it, but perhaps even her heart and possibly her soul. Introducing a new series called Ultimatum.
Selma Rayon's life was not built on luxury, but on discipline. Morning lectures, afternoons at the courier office, evenings bent over textbooks until the pages blurred into gray. It wasn't the kind of life anyone envied, but it was hers, and she guarded it fiercely. Her scholarship paid for school. Her job paid for rent. Survival was a delicate balancing act she had perfected over years of moving alone through the world. Orphaned young, raised by the state, she had learned to build her own scaffolding. Friends who were kind, professors who believed in her, a small circle she trusted like fragile glass. But no parents, no siblings, no safety net if she fell. That aloneness lived in her like a second pulse. It made her strong, yes, but it also made her wary. She knew too well how quickly a life could be overturned. That afternoon, gray skies stretched low as she carried a stack of thick envelopes to one of the tallest towers downtown, Voss Industries. The name was branded across half the skyline. People spoke it with reverence or disdain, depending on which side of Alaric Voss's world they stood. Selma didn't care about the man behind the name. She had deliveries to finish, and then a study session with Gregory, her closest friend. He had been her anchor since sophomore year, the brother she never had, though she never admitted how much she leaned on him. Just knowing she'd see him later steadied her. The elevator ride was long and silent, its polished steel walls reflecting her mismatched eyes back at her. One brown, one green, each color a contradiction she carried everywhere. She pulled her thick hair tighter into a band at the nape of her neck, sighed, and checked the delivery slip again. When the doors opened, the air itself seemed different. It was colder on this floor, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. The way rooms feel after arguments, when silence settles like dust. The receptionist smiled too widely, her eyes darting to the hallway as though measuring who might be listening. Selma handed over the package, ready to leave quickly. Then she heard it. "Who is that?" The voice slid across the room, smooth, commanding. Selma turned, and her breath caught. Alaric Voss. He stood like the paintings of angels she'd once seen in borrowed books, tall, sculpted, his golden hair gleaming under recessed lights, his ice-blue eyes piercing and unblinking. His face was perfection, unsettlingly so, as if no flaw had ever dared exist there. And yet, perfection had never made her more uneasy. He didn't smile. He simply looked at her, and she felt it, bone deep. Not the way men sometimes looked at women, with careless hunger, but the way predators watched prey, fascinated by the twitch of muscle before the run. Selma gave a polite nod, her courier's mask sliding into place. She forced her voice steady as she thanked the receptionist and turned back toward the elevator. The polished doors closed behind her, but the sensation didn't lift. It clung to her the rest of the day, the weight of his stare pressing against her thoughts like fingerprints she couldn't wipe away. Selma was sensitive to things like that. Energies, currents, unspoken intentions. It had made her life harder sometimes, always noticing the shift in tone, the too long pauses, the smiles that didn't reach the eyes, but it had also protected her. She could feel danger long before it arrived. And what she had felt in Alaric Voss's gaze wasn't interest. It was intent. For the rest of the evening, even as Gregory made her laugh over coffee and asked about her classes, Selma caught herself glancing over her shoulder. She told herself it was silly. Just a powerful man noticing a delivery girl, nothing more. But in her chest, where that second pulse of loneliness lived, fear stirred. Quiet, patient, warning. Something had seen her. Really seen her. And Selma knew. Whatever it wasn't letting go. Alaric Voss had been raised to shine. His father was steel, his mother ice. And between them, their only son was shaped into something that looked perfect from every angle. Tutors sharpened his brilliance. Etiquette stripped away his flaws. and privilege carved him into a figure admired by all but truly known by none. He was told he was handsome before he knew what handsome meant. Blonde hair like sunlight, eyes as pale and cutting as glass. A face people praised before he'd learned how to frown. Alaric grew up knowing beauty opened doors faster than words, and so he used it. By 17, women whispered his name as a challenge. By 21, he left behind a trail of admirers, lovers, and scandals smoothed over by family influence. He never cared. He never even tried to. They were ornaments, amusements, fleeting distractions he discarded like drained glasses at the end of a banquet. His reputation as a womanizer grew until it became its own kind of armor. The world assumed he wanted everyone, which was easier than explaining he wanted nothing. But emptiness had a way of gnawing at him. The parties blurred. The laughter never reached him. The women in his bed became interchangeable shadows. For the first time, Alaric began to wonder if what he lacked was not another conquest, but permanence. A wife. Someone who would stay. So he decided, in the precise and calculated way he did all things, he would choose a bride. Not through courting or patience, but through invention. His invention. A contest. A stage for women to compete for his attention, where he could measure them like portfolios and discard them at will. It was efficient. It was brilliant. It was inevitable. And then, she appeared. The girl with the package. Alaric had been walking through the reception hall when he saw her, standing in plain uniform, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face bare of anything but its own honesty. And still, beautiful. Not the painted kind of beauty he was used to, not polished and perfected. Hers was raw, striking. The mismatched eyes, one brown, one green, should have been a flaw. But instead they were arresting. Her skin carried warmth against the sterility of his halls, her thick black hair refusing to bend to the neatness of the world he'd built. For a moment, Alaric's breath caught. She was not like the others. She was not his, and she didn't care who he was. Her nod was polite, her smile thin, her steps brisk toward the elevator. She did not linger. She did not bend. She did not feed him the worship he'd always been given freely. It was intoxicating. "Who is that?" Alaric asked, his voice filling the polished floor. The receptionist stiffened, fumbling with the delivery slip. "Selma Rayan, sir. She's with the courier service. A regular, I believe." Selma. Her name fit like a whisper against his tongue. Alaric lingered a moment longer, watching the reflection of the elevator doors long after they had swallowed her. Then he turned, smooth as ever, and walked back to his office. Inside, he pressed the intercom. "Send Victor in." Moments later, Victor Rogers, head of his security, a man whose silence was as formidable as his fists, stepped through the door. Alaric leaned back in his chair, ice-blue eyes narrowing with quiet command. "The courier. Selma Rayan. I want everything. Where she lives, where she works, who she knows, discreetly." Victor inclined his head, expression unreadable. "Yes, sir." As the door closed behind him, Alaric let the stillness settle. His fingers traced the edge of a crystal tumbler on his desk, not lifting it, just circling the rim as though keeping rhythm with a thought. Selma Rayan. The name pulsed like a chord through the silence. He thought of her mismatched eyes, of the way she hadn't cared to stay. Every woman he'd ever known had wanted something from him. His wealth, his name, his bed, his promises. But she had wanted nothing. And that, more than anything, made him want everything. That night, as laughter echoed through the restaurant of his next conquest, Alaric Voss was elsewhere. His mind lingered not on his guests, not on his game, but on the courier girl who had looked at him and walked away. He had already decided the contest would go on. Invitations would be sent, champagne poured, his circle of women summoned like moths to a flame. But already, before the first glass was raised, he knew the truth. The contest was not for him to find a bride. It was to bring her back. Selma Rayan. The bachelor had chosen. Morning put the city in a soft gray frame, and Selma slid back into the rhythm that kept her life stitched together. Lecture, coffee, work, study. Routine was how you survived without a safety net. Routine was scaffolding. She sat near the window in ethics, pen moving in quiet loops along the paper's margin, spirals and tiny constellations that appeared whenever her nerves hummed. The professor's voice rose and fell. Somewhere behind her, a classmate whispered about a party, about a guy with a jawline like a weapon. Selma exhaled, drew another spiral, and felt the weight she'd been trying not to name. A gaze she'd carried home from a skyscraper yesterday like a bruise beneath a sleeve. After class, Gregory was waiting by the door, leaning against the wall with the kind of easy grin that disarmed even the morning's worst. "You're doodling galaxies again," he said, tapping the edge of her notebook. "They keep me from correcting the professor out loud," Selma said, dry. She snapped the notebook shut and shouldered her bag. "Coffee is on me," Gregory declared, as if it were a court order. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one that says you fought a dragon and won, but you still smell smoke." She might have laughed any other day. Today, the line threaded neatly into the ache she'd been ignoring. "Fine, coffee, but I picked the table." They cut across campus, the February air tasting like metal. At the cafe, she chose the corner facing the door. Gregory didn't comment. He knew her habits. He ordered something reckless with extra shots. She ordered tea. While they waited, the barista apologized for a delay, with a smile too wide for the words it carried. Selma tilted her head, that unconscious angle she couldn't unlearn, as if listening for a tone the ear couldn't catch. "She doesn't believe in herself," she murmured. "What?" Gregory asked. "Nothing." She lined the sugar packets by color, then by number, then messed them up again like she'd caught herself mid-ritual. When the cups arrived, she wrapped her hands around the heat and felt her shoulders drop a fraction. "You're going to tell me," Gregory said, not a question. She hesitated. She didn't like naming things that hadn't yet taken form. Names sharpened edges. "Delivery yesterday," she said finally. "Top floor of Voss Industries." Gregory's eyebrows climbed. "Huh. I ran into someone." The air turned thinner. He looked at me like I'd interrupted a prayer. "Alaric Voss?" Gregory asked too lightly. She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Gregory's grin faded. "Do I need to buy a taser for you? I'm fine." She wasn't. It was just cold. The way he looked, like a decision being made. They drank in a silence that wasn't quite comfortable. When her tea was gone, Selma fished a small, flattened copper bottle cap from her coat pocket and rolled it between her fingers. It had a star pressed into its center, a silly little thing she'd found near the shelter last week and kept because it felt like it had belonged to someone kind. Objects held the echo of hands, she'd learned. Some people said that was nonsense. The people who said that rarely noticed what rooms felt like after grief had left. "You collecting treasure again?" Gregory asked. "It keeps my thoughts from chewing holes in themselves," she said. She slipped the cap back into her pocket and forced a smile. "I've got the afternoon shift at the shelter. If I don't leave now, Mr. Pickles will riot." "Give Mr. Pickles my love," Gregory said solemnly, "and text me when you get home." "I always do." Outside, the sky brightened, but the light felt thin. On the walk to the shelter, she caught her reflection in a train window. One brown eye, one green. Forever the mismatch that made strangers stare. She tightened the elastic at the nape of her neck, catching a wave of thick black hair before it could escape. Across the street, a black sedan idled with its engine whispering. Maybe the driver was waiting for someone. Maybe it had idled there yesterday too. At the shelter, everything smelled like sawdust and damp fur and warm breathing. Selma's bones knew how to arrange themselves here. She knelt beside a kennel and slipped her fingers through the bars. "Good morning, sir," she told a gray-muzzled terrier with the gravitas of a retired general. "We're going to negotiate a breakfast." Mr. Pickles, who had no interest in titles, wagged his whole back half and sneezed in approval. Selma laughed, soft and unguarded. She hummed a bar of a song she'd learned in a home she didn't remember, the notes so low they were almost a thought. She spoke to the cats like colleagues as she refilled their bowls. She thanked the ancient orange one for not biting her. She apologized to a very offended kitten for existing. Her quirks earned her eye rolls from strangers and indulgent smiles from the staff. Today, as she wheeled a bag of kibble down the aisle, the bell over the front door gave a brief, polite ring. She looked up through the mesh of kennels. A man stood near the threshold, coat too nice for the neighborhood, gaze skimming the room without landing. Lost, maybe. Or pretending. Selma's head tilted. The hum in her chest brightened, then coiled in on itself like a warning. She turned away, made a note to check the back exit later, and chided herself for jumping at shadows. Still, when she scooped Mr. Pickles into her arms, she held him a little tighter than usual. By closing, the strange man was gone. The air felt clean again. She stacked the last of the food bins, wiped down the counter, and signed her initials on the clipboard with a flourish she'd earned. Work was honest. Work kept her free. Dusk pulled the city's edges in as she walked home. She took her usual route, then changed it, twice, without thinking. A slalom through streets that felt kinder. Once, she stopped at a corner and waited for no reason anyone else would have recognized. Once, she doubled back to stand beneath a brick arch because a breeze there had the taste of rain and not exhaust. She knew how she looked when she did things like that. Odd. But the oddness had kept her safe more than once, and she trusted it more than she trusted polite smiles. Her building's stoop creaked the way it always had. The hallway smelled like floor polish and someone's attempt at soup. She climbed the stairs, humming under her breath again, an old habit to fill the air until it belonged to her. At her door, her foot paused. An envelope rested against the threshold. Thick paper, no postage, no return address. Her name in precise black ink, written in the kind of hand that never made mistakes. Selma's mouth went dry. She looked left, then right. The hall was empty. Somewhere below, a radio murmured. She slid the envelope up with the toe of her shoe and stooped carefully to pick it up, listening for the prickle along her spine that meant don't. It didn't come. It didn't need to. She already knew. Inside, a single card. No seal. Just a sentence. Centered and immaculate. Some doors open only once. I expect you. Then a signature. Alaric Voss. Her mismatched eyes flicked over the words again, as if they might rearrange into mercy. They didn't. The paper was heavy. It made her key feel light in her other hand. Selma stood very still in the hallway and felt, with the certainty that had never lied to her, that the game had begun. She wasn't sure what board they were using. She wasn't sure of the rules. But she knew the other player. She had carried his gaze home with her like a cold coin pressed into her palm. She slid the card back into its envelope, unlocked her door, and stepped inside. Before she closed the door, she bent, very quietly, and set a small copper bottle cap just inside the threshold. A talisman as foolish as it was necessary, something to mark the boundary as hers. In the thin silence that followed, the city breathed. A car idled and moved on. Somewhere a dog barked, somewhere a laugh broke and healed itself. Selma leaned her forehead against the cool wood, humming a barely voice to keep the edges of the world from sharpening too fast. Not today, she told the empty room. Not yet. But in her chest, that second pulse, loneliness braided with warning, kept time with a truth she couldn't sweeten. Something had seen her, and it wasn't finished. The city bled into twilight when Victor Hale entered Alaric's office. The glass walls reflected the last of the sky, pale blue sinking into indigo. Alaric sat behind his desk, a crystal tumbler in his hand, though the amber inside had not been touched. He wasn't drinking tonight. He was waiting. Victor laid a folder on the desk, precise and heavy. Selma Rayan, he said simply. Her name filled the air. Alaric let it linger before opening the folder. Orphaned young. State care until she was 18. Full scholarship now, majoring in environmental studies. Works as a courier to cover living costs. Lives alone in a modest apartment near campus. Victor's voice was flat, clinical. He might have been reading from a list of acquisitions. Alaric flipped the page. A photograph, paperclip to the corner. Her, walking out of a cafe, her mismatched eyes turned away from the camera, hair loose for once. Even blurred, she was arresting. Beautiful without makeup, without effort. A beauty uncurated, unbought. Her habits are distinctive, Victor continued. She hums under her breath when she's unsettled. Talks to animals as if they were people. Collects objects, small things, coins, stones, scraps. Seems to believe they hold meaning. She is... He paused, as if the word resisted him. Charming. Odd. But harmless. Alaric smiled faintly, though his eyes remained fixed on the photograph. Charming but odd. He liked the contradiction. And aware, Victor added. That made Alaric's gaze lift. Aware? Your men followed her. She changed her route 3 times, paused at corners without reason, stared directly at one of them as if she knew. Not paranoia, awareness. I believe she senses when she's being watched. Alaric leaned back, the leather creaking under him. Fascination coiled through his chest. Interesting. Victor continued. She keeps a small circle. One friend in particular, Gregory Ward, male, 22, pre-med student. They spend significant time together. The tumbler in Alaric's hand clicked against the desk as he set it down too sharply. And the nature of this friendship? Platonic from observation, Victor said carefully. They meet for coffee. He escorts her home sometimes. Protective, but no indication of a romantic relationship. Alaric's jaw tightened. Protective, he echoed, the word tasting bitter. She appears to trust him, Victor offered. Alaric's smile was thin, brittle. She appears to trust him. That was enough. Already his mind pictured Gregory sitting too close, laughing too loudly, being allowed into Selma's circle where Alaric was not yet permitted. The thought was acid. She's not his to protect, Alaric said softly, though the glass edge in his voice cut deep. Victor didn't reply. He was too disciplined for that. Alaric closed the folder and leaned forward, fingers steepled. Selma Rayan, he murmured, savoring her name again. She doesn't realize she's already in play. She doesn't realize the pieces are moving around her. He looked past Victor, past the glass, to the sprawl of the city below. Lights flared alive in 100,000 windows. Somewhere down there, Selma was breathing, walking, living in a world that still believed it was hers. She will know soon enough, Alaric said. And when she does, Gregory Ward will learn his place. On her next run to Voss Industries, which was unexpected, they usually only needed their service once a week. The receptionist stopped her from leaving. Her smile was too polished when she said, Mr. Voss would like a word if you'd follow me. Selma's throat went dry. She had done nothing wrong. She had signed every slip, delivered every package. Still, her stomach knotted as she walked the silent hallway. They left her in his office alone. Glass walls reflected her back at herself, fractured and tall. She sat stiffly in the chair, resisting the urge to hum. The silence pressed. The office was quieter than any place Selma had ever stood. Even the air felt curated, expensive. She sat in the chair across from his desk, her courier bag tucked close to her feet, her fingers folded tightly together. When the door opened, Alaric entered without haste. He moved like someone who knew every eye was already on him. Miss Rayan, he said warmly, as if her presence had been requested weeks in advance instead of minutes ago. Mr. Voss, she replied, polite but stiff. He smiled in a professional manner as though he was doing an interview, then lowered himself behind the vast desk. The silence stretched. Selma had the sudden impression of being catalogued. the way scientists might regard an insect pinned beneath glass. "You received my note, didn't you?" His voice was pleasant, but it left little room for denial. Selma cleared her throat. "Yes. But I wasn't sure what the invitation was for. I thought it was a mistake." She gave a quick laugh, trying to sound casual. "I'm just a courier, a college student. I couldn't imagine what you'd want with me." His smile deepened, but his eyes did not warm. "And why not you?" Most women would be eager to call the office to find out what he wanted, but Selma didn't respond at all. The question startled her. "Because," she fumbled, "because I'm no one that you'd normally deal with, like a business partner." "You would be surprised at the type of people I deal with half of the time," he countered softly. "Your presence is just as important as anyone else's." Selma blinked, unsure whether it was reassurance or a trap. Alaric leaned back, studying her. "How is school?" She stiffened. "It's fine. Busy." "Environmental studies, I believe," he said. Her stomach dropped. "Yes," she said carefully. She shouldn't have been surprised that he knew so much, but she was. "And the work you do here, deliveries, that must take up hours you'd rather spend studying." Selma tried to smile. "Bills don't pay themselves." "True. Scholarships rarely cover everything." His voice gentled, threading concern through observation. "Rent, books, groceries, the strain must be constant." Her brows knit. She sat straighter, her voice sharpening. "You seem to know an awful lot about me, Mr. Voss. More than you should." His smile flickered, then steadied. "I like to know about the people I invest in." "Invest?" she echoed. He steepled his fingers. "That brings me to why you're here." Selma's chest tightened as he leaned forward. "I'm arranging something unconventional, a way to choose a wife. The women of my circle will compete. Some will treat it as insult, others as opportunity. It will reveal things I want to see." "And what would that have to do with me?" she asked cautiously. This guy had to be a psychopath to come up with something like this. But there were shows that did just this for entertainment. But she didn't watch that either. It made a mockery of something sacred, in her small opinion anyway. "You would not compete. You would sharpen them. Your presence will unsettle them, make them fight harder. I would see them struggle, and I would see you endure." Her jaw clenched. "So you want me to be part of a game?" "A foil," he corrected gently. "Not a pawn. Pawns are sacrificed. Foils reveal truth." She frowned, shaking her head. "If you think they're shallow, why want them at all? Why not just choose someone who isn't?" For the first time, his smile turned pragmatic. "Because marriage, Miss Rayan, is rarely about affection. It's about bloodlines, stability, names tied to names. A good family marries another good family. The rest is window dressing." Selma's breath caught. His honesty was worse than his charm. "And where do I fit into that?" she asked tightly. He reached into a drawer, slid a thick cream-colored envelope across the desk. "Here are the details of your role, what you'll be asked to do, and what you'll be paid for it." The paper's energy seemed like it had a ball and chain tied to it. Selma didn't touch it. "I don't," she began, but he cut in smoothly. "You don't have to decide now. Take it with you. Consider it. You'll find the compensation generous. Enough to ease the hours you spend carrying other people's packages." She bristled, heat prickling under her skin. Then, almost idly, he added, "Though I admit, I'm curious why such an elegant invention as yourself ends up in such a poor corner of town near the campus." The words stung sharper than any insult. Selma held her temper by its throat. "Because it's affordable. Because I work. Because it's what I have." Alaric tilted his head, contrition touching his features like paint. "Forgive me. Poorly phrased. I meant no offense." But she felt it, the hollow note under the words. He wasn't sorry. He was measuring her restraint. Selma stood, lifting her courier bag, her body rigid. If there's nothing else. Alaric rose as well, perfectly civil. Of course. But remember, not everyone could sit where you are and keep their composure. That is worth more than you think. Her hand tightened on the envelope as she left. The city air outside struck her lungs like a shock. She was sure it was nothing, that it was just a weird encounter. Surely he didn't think she would take him up on his offer, did he? And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling she had just been bought and sold, even without signing her name. It lay on the table beside her textbooks, cream-colored, heavy, like it didn't belong anywhere near chipped coffee mugs or secondhand lamps. She hadn't opened it. Not yet. Gregory texted to ask if she wanted to meet for dinner. She typed busy with work and deleted it. Then studying and deleted that too. She finally sent nothing, sliding the phone face down. Instead, she hummed under her breath, a low string of notes, as if sound could soften the walls pressing closer. She thought of Alaric's questions. How much he had known. How easily he had spoken of her rent, her scholarship, her hours. It hadn't been kindness. It had been inventory. Her apartment was too small to hold the envelope without it taking up space in every corner of her mind. She hadn't opened it. Not until Gregory came by. He sat on her couch, peeling the flap with careful fingers while she sat across from him, arms folded tight. His brows rose as he read. "Selma," he said slowly. "This is a lot of money." She rubbed her temples. "That's the problem. It's too much. It would cover rent, tuition, probably the next 2 years." He flipped the page. "But..." His tone shifted, caution sharpening his words. "This doesn't sit right. You'd be the only one without a trust fund, the only one who isn't from their world." She stared at him, uneasy. "Meaning what?" "Meaning you'd be a target before you even stepped foot in that house. Money makes people cruel, Selma. You'd stand out, and not in the way he's pretending." Her throat tightened. "You think it's that bad?" Gregory folded the papers shut. His expression was grim. "You ever see Get Out?" Selma froze. "Don't." "I'm serious. Rich man, weird contest, isolated house. A bunch of women fighting to please him while you're the outlier. It screams trap." She looked away, chewing the inside of her cheek. He wasn't wrong. That night, Selma drafted an email. She kept it polite, professional, thanking Mr. Voss for the consideration but declining his offer. Her finger hovered over the send button until Gregory nudged her. "Do it, before you talk yourself out of it." She clicked. Relief and dread twisted together in her chest. The email had been polite, professional, final. Gregory even proofread it before she hit send. "Thank you, Mr. Voss, but I must decline your offer. I am grateful for your consideration." 2 days later, she was summoned anyway. The receptionist's smile was too bright as she handed Selma a visitor's badge. "Mr. Voss would like to clarify your decision." Clarify. The word coiled in her stomach like wire. When she entered the office, Alaric was already at his desk. His smile was thinner this time, more blade than mask. "You refused my offer," he said without preamble. "I sent an email," Selma said carefully. "It didn't seem like the sort of thing I should say in person." "You didn't think," he said smoothly, cutting her off. His eyes glinted. "Do you know how many people would kill for this chance? How many would beg for it?" Selma's jaw tightened. "Then let them. You said yourself there are plenty of women eager to play." "No," Alaric said. He rose, pacing behind his desk, his reflection doubling in the glass wall. "It has to be you." Her chest tightened. "Why?" Silence stretched, deliberate. His expression gave nothing. Selma's pulse thudded. "Is it because I'm different?" she asked, voice low but steady. "Because I didn't grow up with your money? Because I don't look like the women in your circle?" For a flicker of a second, something almost like offense flashed in his eyes. Then Alaric leaned in, his voice silk over steel. "No, it's not that. I don't care about appearances. I care about substance. And you have more of it than the rest of them combined." Her breath caught. Not flattery, but dissection. Alaric's tone cooled. "This isn't about likeness. It's about balance. They preen. You endure. That contrast is what I want. That's what will make the game real. Selma shivered. The word game made her skin crawl. This was supposed to be a choice, she whispered. Alaric's eyes hardened. If you refuse, you'll find yourself without work. Couriers are easy to replace, and I don't need to explain further. The threat landed like ice water down her spine. Her fear snapped into fury. Her chin lifted, her voice steady. You weren't punched in the face enough as a kid, were you? For the first time, Alaric stilled. His surprise cracked into laughter, low and dark, echoing against the glass walls. You're a terrible person, Selma pressed, the words leaving her before fear could stop them. You called this opportunity, but it's nothing but control. Alaric leaned forward on the desk, eyes bright with something between rage and fascination. Control is opportunity. You'll learn that soon enough. When she left, the envelope was still in her hand, heavier than ever. Not promise, not opportunity, a tether. Gregory didn't knock, not really. He tapped once on the doorframe before letting himself in, the way people do when they've already been given permission 100 times before. Selma sat at her small kitchen table, textbooks spread open, the cream-colored envelope beside them like an intruder. Her eyes flicked up. You read my message? I did. Gregory dropped into the chair across from her, pulling the envelope closer. He shook his head, his expression sharp with disbelief. He really called you back in after you refused? Selma's mouth tightened. Apparently he doesn't like taking no for an answer. Gregory gave a humorless laugh. No kidding. So what was his reasoning this time? She hesitated, then forced it out. He said it has to be me. That it isn't about appearances. That it's about balance. Substance. Gregory's eyebrows shot up. He leaned back, folding his arms. Huh. He's really not into appearances? That's rich. He looks like he was carved out of marble just to sit on a pedestal and be admired. Selma couldn't help it. A small laugh broke through. Miracles happen. The smile faded from Gregory's face as quickly as it came. Selma, this isn't funny. He threatened your job. Her silence was enough of an answer. Gregory raked a hand through his hair, pacing the length of the tiny apartment. This is insane. You don't need this. You should walk. Quit. Find something else. You think I haven't tried? Her voice cracked, then steadied. I've applied everywhere. Grocery stores, offices, call centers. Nobody wants to work around a student's schedule. The courier job pays just enough to keep me in this apartment and on track for school. Gregory stopped pacing, his hands on his hips. His eyes softened, but his frustration didn't. You don't deserve to be cornered like this. He's using your situation against you. She leaned back, pressing her palms to her eyes for a moment. I know. Gregory sat down again, quieter now. Then at least be careful. This man, he doesn't just want to hire you. He wants to own you. And once you step into his world, it's not going to let you back out. Selma gave him a tired look. So, what do I do? Let him take the job away and lose everything? Gregory's jaw worked. He didn't have an answer. Finally, he said, Then you play. But you play for yourself, not for him. The envelope lay between them, heavier than both their hands combined. Selma didn't touch it. She whispered almost to herself, It's not a choice anymore. Gregory squeezed her hand once, firm. Then make it one anyway. The mansion was taller than it needed to be, its windows catching the last of the fading light and throwing it back like watchful eyes. Selma stood at the foot of the steps, smoothing her dress once more. It wasn't designer, it wasn't couture, just a soft navy fabric she'd found on clearance last winter. Modest, simple. It was all she had. Gregory's voice echoed in her head. Play for yourself, Selma, not for him.